Hey, how's it going? Today we're going to talk about a troubled mind and being misaligned with God. This is a two-part series, so we're going to go ahead and cover the first one. So stay tuned. Let's go. Welcome back. So today we're going to cover 3 points on being misaligned with God and also two having the troubled mind. Then we're going to have another video that's going to come out that's going to tell you how to realign with God, and also two things that you can do to help with that trouble mind, because hey, the Bible is full of different stories and different scriptures that helps with that. So let's dive into having a trouble mind and being misaligned with God. So we know first thing that leads to a vulnerable mind is temptation. So then we wonder, like, what is the definition of vulnerable? So let's look at the definition of vulnerable. Vulnerable is susceptible to physical or emotional attack or harm. So then we start thinking about the different stories in the Bible and the things that have happened. So then you have somebody like Judas. That's one of the first ones to pop up. How he betrayed Jesus for silver. Then you have somebody like King David. You have the children of Israel, which God led them out of being captive by Pharaoh, working hard as slaves and stuff. I mean, he fed them. He did. I mean, he led Moses to do wondrous things to take care of them, but still, they wanted to worship idols. They wasn't even really concerned with even studying him at all he had done for them. And then you have somebody like King Saul, which King Saul was appointed to be the king by Samuel, and King Saul was so into the people and pleasing the people, he wasn't even into pleasing God. Hey, shows a vulnerable mind. Then you had somebody named Jonah. God came to Jonah and told him to go and preach and he chose to run. He chose to run. He went and got on a boat and everything. He was like, I'm not going to preach over there where you want me to go. I'm going elsewhere. And I mean, there's a storm that came up, and the people on the boat was just shook. They was trying to figure out what was going on, and come to find out it was him. That's the reason why the storm came on, and they had to throw him overboard. And we all know the story. Once he was thrown overboard, he got swallowed by a large fish. So Jonah had a bad thing going on, but yet he still went back and done what God had instructed him to. And then we had Jeremiah. See, Jeremiah was another one that he was told to minister and he couldn't marry. So the people rejected him. They talked about him and he felt bad because he was all alone. So then when we think about how that temptation there left them to have a vulnerable mind, so now we're looking at how they didn't recognize the voice of God. So what's some ways that we don't recognize the voice of God? Not praying, not studying his word, and definitely not allowing God to come into our hearts. Definitely big ones. And also too, focusing on the evil and opposing things versus looking to the good. We want to focus on the evil, the opposing, and how that begins to destroy us. So then the lack of learning to trust God or even trusting yourself and not seeking wise counsel of God. All those things could definitely lead to you not recognizing his voice. So when he began to speak to you, you won't even know who he is. So then you have the selfishness. So now when we jump onto the selfishness, we start looking back at King David, which was a big one, due to his sin with Bathsheba, that led him to commit murder and lie. Bad, right? Then you have Ahab. Ahab wanted Naboth's vineyard, which was right beside his kingdom. So he wanted the vineyard to plant a garden, but Naboth wasn't hearing that. He told Ahab he wasn't going to give him his vineyard. So Ahab went home, mad, upset, told his wife Jezebel about it. So Jezebel go and lie on Naboth and have Naboth killed. And then she gave the land to her husband. He didn't ask no questions. He accepted it and was happy about it, which is sad. And then you had Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel because God rejected his sacrifice. That's a very selfish thing to do. Very selfish thing to do. Then you had James and John, which was the disciples of God, asked Jesus if they can have this special place in his kingdom at his left hand and his right hand, just forgetting about the rest of the people, just focusing on them. being higher power than everybody else. So they're more focused on the power that Jesus was telling them about versus actually serving and helping the people that really needed the assistance. It's kind of sad, really sad. And then you have like the older brother for the prodigal son. The problem with the older brother for the prodigal son was that he loved his father dearly. I mean, like he did everything for his father, but he didn't like his younger brother. His younger, they had an inheritance from the father, so the father gave them an inheritance. The younger brother chose to go out and splendor and spend all his. I mean, he was so broke to the point where he was eating slop with the hogs. And then he realized, man, I just need to go back home. My dad got everything there, so why am I here doing this? I need to go back home. So he ended up leaving, going back home, and his father seen him coming from afar. So his father run. He had his servants run to grab a robe, run to kill the fattest calf. And then his brother heard about it. His brother got mad. He was like, well, I've been here serving you, helping you, doing all this for you, and you haven't killed the fattest calf for me at all. You didn't do none of that for me. But for my brother, you do that? The one that went out and done all this wrong stuff, you do it for him? So we can see through his eyes that, hey, it sounds right, but that's a selfish thing. Why not worship with him? You should be happy and glad that your brother came back. But a lot of times we don't look at things in that from that point of view. We look at it as, what about me? I'm always forgot about, but technically you're not always forgot about. You know, God is the ultimate one that rewards us. So where man may not recognize us, God will. We just gotta make sure we do all unto him in the way that he would have us. So as we dove into these little different ones, there it was. It was about the being vulnerable to the flesh, not recognizing the voice of God, and last but not least, being selfishness. Being very selfish. Being very selfish. The next video is coming up. So be waiting.